The Railway Museum in Mulhouse is well worth a day trip if you're in nearby Switzerland or southern Germany. There are frequent trains from Basel station, though it does mean starting from the rather grim French side. From Mulhouse station, a number 3 tram takes you near the main entrance, where the gate guardian gives you a good welcome. Inside is a splendid layout diagram showing the many unique exhibits displayed in date order. The rear entrance can be seen from the railway and has rail accessibility to most tracks with a turntable and traverser. The old loco shed was converted to a museum between 1971 and 76, and the new big hall was opened in 2004. It is now called the City du Train Museum, and it's over twice the size of the comparable York Railway Museum. It's laid out with parallel tracks for better viewing and is not so crowded. There are 2 main halls. The first one designed to be in pseudo-romantic near darkness, but the second, much larger, has good daylight plus spotlights and has roller shutters open at the back to show all the approach roads curving in. Now, let's remember that the first use of steam for a locomotive was designed and built for road use in France by Cuno in 1771. It had even less success than the later road steamer by Trevithick and Vivian, although a replica of it in the Tampa Bay Museum does run rather better. There seems to be little about the earliest railways in the Mulhouse Museum, possibly due to an absence of replicas. The start of French railways seems to be around 1828, when Stephenson exported to France some 4-wheel locomotives with return flues and vertical cylinders for the railway between Saint-Étienne and Lyon. The loco speed was said to be about 10 kilometers per hour, but after modification by a Frenchman called Marc Seguin with a water tube boiler, it reached about 50. Marc Seguin himself patented the multi-tube boiler, but use of it had to be royalty-free due to an earlier 1823 patent by James Neville, a road locomotive engineer in London. Robert Stephenson helped with several of the new French railways, and was recognised by being made a Knight of the Légion d'Honneur. The museum exhibits are well labelled and often have an audio commentary available. The description usually includes the builder and the railway where the loco ran. Prior to full nationalisation in 1938, there were a group of railways, and this map shows where they operated. You can see the Nord that ran the Golden Arrow boat trains, the West, the Est, the Eta, the Paris-Lyon, the Paris-Lyon Mediterranean that ran the longest distances, and the Midi, the only one that did not radiate from Paris. So, to some of the locos in roughly date order. To start with, the Gate Guardian has no label, but is known to be a Stephenson design long boiler 060 with all the drivers ahead of the firebox. It was built in France for the PLM and numbered 030C 815. As in Britain, the 060 was popular for goods locos, but with a wider loading gauge on the continent, outside cylinders were frequently favourite. Inside the museum we can start with the 1844 number 33 Saint-Pierre of the Paris-Rouen Railway. It's a 222 built by Alcard Buddicombe in 1843, Buddicombe being an English engineer who had moved to France. It is similar to the London and North Western Allen Crew type 222s, and is the oldest genuine loco in the French collection. It did come to London for the Festival of Britain in 1951 and has also been shown in the centre of Paris. This 222 is called the Eagle, or in German, of course, der Adler. It is a Stephenson long boiler type with Haycock firebox and was supplied in 1846. Another Stephenson designed long boilered loco single with the Haycock firebox is this 222 called Cézanne. It was built in France in 1847 and is the first loco in France to be equipped for oil burning. This is a woodcut made in 1848 celebrating the railway fête de Calais. Presumably this dates the start of the ferryboat trains. The Crampton patent design of locomotives was the idea of Thomas Crampton, who worked in the GWR design office from 1839 to 1852. This is the exhibit in the Nuremberg Museum, which is a replica, but in Mulhouse we have the only surviving example, built in 1852 for the Paris-Strasbourg Railway, as number 80 and named Locomotives. He wanted a standard gauge loco with the same speed and stability of a broad gauge one. It has a low boiler, cylinders outside the frame, and a large driving wheel behind the firebox. It could manage speeds up to 75 miles an hour and covered over 1.5 million miles before final withdrawal in 1914. Wilhelm von Engers was general manager of the Imperial Austrian State Railway. His design was for a locomotive that would tackle steep gradients and sharp curves. Patented in 1852, it has an articulated tender that adds some of the weight to the drivers. About 15 examples survive, this one being an 064 built by Esslingen for the Midi and named Ladour. Almost hidden in the darkness is this nice 060 tank built for the West in 1870. It did visit Paris a few years ago, so it can be seen. This Sharp Stewart 242 was built in Manchester in 1882 for the Paris-Orléans Railway, and it has a special brass boiler casing for use at the head of the presidential train. A leading designer in France was Alfred George de Glennon. He was born in 1848 in London of his father Robert von Glenn and his Scottish mother. He read mechanical engineering at King's College London and moved to work in France in 1868 and changed his name. His system of 4-cylinder compound working with high pressure cylinders outside and low pressure inside was used across France and elsewhere for many years. The Nord Railway 422 number 701 is an early example that was built in 1885 and has the drivers not coupled and the low pressure cylinders outside, but later models with a more familiar format in 440, 442 Atlantics, 460s and 462 Pacific arrangements. Of the two de Glens brought for trial to Britain by the Great Western, here's a photo of La France. Mulhouse's 1899 Nord Atlantic is in darkness now, but used to be visible as a forerunner of the later Nord Pacific 231Es that were used effectively on the boat trains. Their 1936 Pacific in the splendid Nord chocolate livery stands over a pit and is lit underneath so that you can wander down and admire the centre big ends. This smart 460 compound was built for the Midi in 1902, numbered 1314, and proved to be a design that was used by many other railways. In 1900, the PLM started building their Express 440 compounds as wind cutters, with the streamlining proving very useful against strong headwinds found on the Rhone Valley route. Looks a bit weird, but it worked. In the excellent restaurant at Mulhouse, you can sit by this splendid model of a very successful Paris-Orléans compound that formed the basis of several later designs. It started life in 1907 as a 462 Pacific, but was rebuilt as an even better 480 by Chapelon, of whom much more later. Alco built this in 1908 and shipped it across the Atlantic for the Paris-Orléans. It was in useful service until 1944. Also supplied by Alco in 1908 is this typical American steam plough that was based at Aurillec in the Auvergne. For sectioning, to show the firebox and tubes, the French chose a 1911 Nord 464 Baltic loco, one of only two of a very powerful class. The animation does help comprehension of the principles. One of the 400 or so 280 design locos built for World War I was this North British example. As a two-cylinder simple, they proved very durable and lasted in service until 1974. And despite all their very efficient compound locos, this is another two-cylinder simple, a 460, that had been built around 1920 by several firms, including North British, and was latterly to star in 4 films and many rail tours, and be amongst the last to be withdrawn. Here she is on the Orient Express, nominally coming out of Istanbul. As last of class, the 1928 Nord 280 140A259 was withdrawn for preservation and stored in the open for quite a while. Then it was declared beyond restoration and the tender was cut up. The loco did get cosmetic attention and has now been displayed on its side in semi-darkness in order to highlight the wartime efforts of the resistance. If the light was better, you could see the undersides without crawling underneath quite nicely. André Chapelon was a French locomotive designer with an English steel-making grandfather heritage. He was a fully qualified engineer who brought science to design. He worked with Kilchap, Gresley, Bullitt and Porter. His tremendous efforts were not always appreciated by the enthusiasts for electrification, and the 212.0 Triumph was scrapped in 1960. Also scrapped early was the 1946 Chapelon 484, number 242.A21, perhaps because it was outperforming the electrics of the day. The famous Vitry Locomotive Testing Laboratory is remembered with a post-war American Baldwin 141R282 of 1947. The Chapelon improvements set up the power from 2,400 to nearly 3,000 horsepower. Incidentally, back in December 1934, the new Elignard number 2001, Cock of the North, accompanied by Oliver Bullitt, Gresley's personal assistant, travelled to the locomotive testing station at Vitry-sur-Seine, near Paris, for 2 months of very useful testing. At that time, Bullitt was also attending the monthly meetings of the French Chief Mechanical Engineers. This clip from the silent Pathé News has been found by the group building the new P2. The most eye-grabbing exhibit is undoubtedly the 464 designed by Marc de Casso. At intervals it comes to life, complete with a smoke generator. That is just a small example of the exhibits. There are many more steam locos with a good selection of noteworthy diesels, electrics and other items besides a good model railway. Some of these can be seen on the good French videos on YouTube. This is an extract from a tour by a small land train that ends up back at the bistro.
Faire parcourir plus de 160 ans d'évolution de la technique pour prendre place dans le simulateur. Revivez cette marche exceptionnelle et la pédale.
Now let's just finish with a clip from a video showing the PR treatment given to the completion of the overhaul of 230G 353, the Orient Express loco. I have cut it before the speeches start. They go on for about 10 minutes.